Get the best off this. Yeah, this ain't gonna be easy. Hi, I'm Toffer and welcome as ever to my spare room. So today I am going to be talking about this beast, the PS2. One of the biggest selling consoles of all time. So the PlayStation 2 came out in 2000 and was discontinued in around about 2013, with the modification model of the PlayStation 2 selling line coming out in 2004. Now what is quite fascinating is that it is the biggest selling console to have been made so far, the DS grouping being very close behind, but the consoles that came out at the same time as the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the GameCube and the Dreamcast, combined don't even match the selling power of the PlayStation 2. It was huge, it was a phenomenon, and with that bigger fan base comes a lot of games. Now for me personally, the PS2 was a huge system in my life. I got it at a time where I'd broken my leg, I was laid up for 18 months, and what was a better time than to do some video gaming where you've got your leg up and all you can do is sit and stare at a TV with a controller in your hand. I don't think it could have been a better time for someone who's hugely into video games to have that flexibility. And with that, I've played a lot of PS2 games and I own a lot of PS2 games. And today I want to talk about the best PlayStation 2 games that were ever made. In my opinion, obviously. So as always with this, I'm going to do my top 5 PlayStation 2 games.
Do a top 10.
If I do top 5s.
Do a top 10.
So it looks like I'm doing a top 10. Now this feels weird. One of the best games that ever came out on the PlayStation 2 was a film tie-in. And it was a game that actually made you feel like Spider-Man. Insomniac managed to bring in web slinging that actually felt fluid and brilliant. But it took them until a PlayStation 4 title to do what they did on a PlayStation 2 game. Everything in between didn't even get close. I still love this game now. It'll always stand up and people will still always compare it to PlayStation 4 games for something that makes you feel like Spider-Man. So I know I'm going on about the web slinging quite a bit, but it was the key feature to this game, and let's be fair, it's a key feature to any Spider-Man game. And as much as I love this one, okay, there are a few things that are a little bit flawed, like these things. Yeah, it's one thing I'm glad that Insomniac didn't bring back. It's such a fun title. It fits in with the film really well. Adds in a few things that the film didn't include to just spread the story out, but it did such a good job. One of the best snowboarding games ever made. Cracking soundtrack, one that I think got a lot of people into a lot of different music. The SSX series really did push the boundaries for a lot of the music I was actually into, and was actually the game that got me into Run DMC, which is kind of no surprise. Just brilliant, all the way through. So SSX Tricky took everything that was brilliant about the original SSX, the stupid moves, the great soundtrack, the bright colourful characters, and dialed it up to 11. The colours got brighter, the songs got bigger, the moves got bigger, the entire game just went ridiculous, but it was brilliant all the way through. They went a little bit more toned down for the later games, kept some of the ridiculous moves, but toned like the colour scheme down and everything like that. There's nothing better than pulling off a huge move and Run DMC's It's Tricky just bouncing out at you as you kick off. Just brilliant. You can have your Final Fantasies. Dragon Quest is the best JRPG that came out on the PlayStation 2. I've never unfortunately been able to play the Persona games on the PlayStation 2. They were never on my radar. I do plan to get around to them at some point, but this game ate my life. 240 hours I put into this game, and that's a lot of time when you consider it's a PlayStation 2 title. I finished this game, and once you complete it, they open up a 60-hour dungeon just to continue your play. Brilliant story, brilliant characters, memorable battle style. I just love this game, and it grew my love for the Dragon Quest series because of this title. So Dragon Quest VIII tells the story of an unnamed protagonist who is out trying to break the curse on his king and the princess of the area he's from. This has all been kicked off by the court jester Dulmagus. Now that court jester obviously then goes on to become the big bad and the Lord of Darkness and the most evil thing on earth, etc, etc, etc. It is a pretty generic story in the grand scheme of things, but it's just so well done. It's such an entertaining game. It looks gorgeous. It plays brilliantly. As I said, it's a huge game that then adds on what would be DLC these days with that 60-hour dungeon at the end. But yeah, I just love this game. So Naughty Dog continuing to try and follow with the love that everyone had for Crash Bandicoot, decided to stick with platformers and started the Jak and Daxter series. This is one of the few games where I actually followed the collectathon aspect and wanted to find everything. I hammered this game when I got it for Christmas one year. I never left my room, I was playing it so much. The bright colours, the interesting characters, the fact we had a silent protagonist that worked because Daxter wouldn't shut up. But he didn't shut up in the best of ways. Two of the best characters that have ever been designed and ever pulled off brilliantly in a video game. And who knew Naughty Dog could go from this to Uncharted and The Last of Us. There's not a lot I can really add here. The Jak and Daxter series was just fantastic, and it did kick off brilliantly with this first platforming spectacle. It was just great fun all the way through. Had a few little flaws in it to try and keep it within typical platforming aesthetic. You didn't really have lives, but you couldn't take much damage before you died and had to restart a little section. But you learnt everything so well that it didn't matter how many times you died, you wanted to go back in and continue. The fact that I wanted to find every last little thing that was in the game to complete it to 100% says a lot, because it's not something I personally do very often, because they just get boring. But with this, Jak and Daxter having a nice little dance whenever they got a precursor orb just made me smile, even though there was only about 4 or 5 different ones. I just smiled each and every time that I found one. Who'd have thought the creation of Resident Evil 4 would have created such an iconic series of games that started off with this amazing title? So while trying to create Resident Evil 4, Hideki Kamiya wanted to go for something a little bit more action orientated and created Devil May Cry instead, as the bigwigs over at Capcom didn't want to be going for something as fast and intense as what was being created. They wanted to try and keep things at least in line with the original Resident Evil series. But Devil May Cry was created, and well, it's still going now. Devil May Cry 5 just being released just over a year ago now. They tried to reinvent it in 2012, but that absolutely flopped. No one liked the recreation, so they ended up going back to what was originally a great game with, let's be fair, one of the best protagonists ever in Dante. You had to have Kingdom Hearts in this list. Combination of Disney characters, Final Fantasy characters, all in one, at the time, sort of cohesive story that none of us kind of expected to go off into what it became. You're running around with the likes of Donald and Goofy on your team and you're fighting Sephiroth, and it doesn't feel weird. It's an insane idea, but my god, it worked. So yeah, Kingdom Hearts was an insane thing to see, let's be fair. It did work brilliantly well. The graphical style was fantastic for the game. The battle system as an action RPG was fantastic for the game. And the story at the time did kind of work. But the fact that they were putting all of these different characters together in one place from multiples of different locations, and the fact that Disney signed it off is impressive. The game has gone on to span 4 billion different iterations. Story is more confusing than any other story ever created, let's be absolutely honest. But the original, where it started, was brilliant. It was fun, it was action-packed, it had enough going in it that it would bring in your hardcore action gamers who wanted huge amounts out of these things to people who just wanted to have a little bit of fun. It had a bit of it for everyone. Team Eco getting the ball rolling. They've made very few games in their time. We have got Eco, we've got Shadow of the Colossus, we've now got The Last Guardian. Beautiful artwork, such a minimalist way of playing. Plus, has anyone ever played a game where you spend the entirety guiding someone and it not be annoying? Eco did it. Eco did something amazing. You had to travel around the world, helping Yorda around, helping her climb walls, fall down sections, making sure that she didn't get taken away by the smoke monsters. You can tell a lot of what they did in this game was actually used in Resident Evil 4. Unfortunately, Resident Evil 4 didn't use it in the best of ways because this was a huge game where you had to help Yorda out, not let her get captured, defeat the enemies, and just guide her by the hand, and it was stunning. Grand Theft Auto goes 3D, does it perfectly. I've never played a game like this before at the time that really grabbed me and took me away and kept me going back. Yeah, I found it a bit of a nightmare when I first played it because I didn't fully get my head around what I was doing and the difficulty levels, and it pushed me a little bit too far at times. This was back when you could play so much around with cheat codes, and if you got to a point where you just wanted to have some fun, bring in a tank, bring in all the weapons and just blow up the world and just see what happens with it. I love this game. In my opinion, it is the best Grand Theft Auto game that came out on the PlayStation 2. Don't care what anyone says. Comments are going to get battered with me for this one, but I love this game. I would love to see them do a full remake on Grand Theft Auto 3 like most games have been getting recently. I know Grand Theft Auto San Andreas would be the one that would get it, but personally I'd love to see 3 get that. I thought this game was brilliant. It took everything that was in the original Grand Theft Autos in a 2D perspective and brought it into 3D. It brought in an amazing, expansive story that went in directions you didn't expect. The game lasted so much longer than you anticipated, and when you thought you were coming close to the end, it would bring in something new, but in a way that you didn't expect, that kept you going. It was brilliant, and the fact they kept on using what they created here to expand and make bigger, and then bring out Grand Theft Auto 5 several years later that was superb, just shows what the guys at Rockstar are ready to do. No, I'm holding the collection box set here is because it's the one I own. Let me just fix that. There we go. But Silent Hill 2 took horror games to a whole new level in brilliance. The fact that I have Silent Hill 1 in my favourite PlayStation 1 games, the fact that Silent Hill 2 hits it out the park on the PlayStation 2 says a lot about what Team Silent could have done if they'd have just been given the freedom to continue pushing the boundaries on horror titles, and what we potentially could have seen if Kojima had been given the hands on Silent Hills. Now, there's not a lot I can really say that hasn't been said already. Silent Hill 2 is probably one of the best horror games that has ever been made, and probably will ever be made. There are a lot of great games out there these days, but still nothing hits it out of the park like Silent Hill 2 did. No one knew where the story was going, no one knew what was coming up, no one knew what was around the corner, and let's be fair, Pyramid Head is one of the greatest creatures ever made, and it's a creature they continued to bring back because the guys who weren't Team Silent didn't have a clue what they were doing, so they just thought bringing in the fan favourite was always going to be the answer, and all they did was made it worse for themselves. They've constantly tried to repeat the success of Silent Hill 2, and they've never managed to succeed, because you can't improve on perfection. Couldn't have been anything else really, could it? Kojima took stealth to a new level on this game. Metal Gear Solid 1 was amazing. As I said in my last video, it still stands up now. Metal Gear Solid 2 just took it to a new level. The fact they brought in a character that was hated. No one likes Raiden until he was brought in Metal Gear Solid 4. Everybody hated him, but everybody still stuck by the game and played it from start to finish, repeatedly, playing as a character they hated because of how good the game was. Don't know anyone who'd do that now. Not only did they do the rarity of releasing a trailer where the character you were actually playing as was hidden, and they actually incorporated Snake all the way through the trailer in sections where you weren't actually playing, and it didn't kick up a fuss, shows that this was very pre-internet days, where you don't get the situation you have these days. In all honesty, if this trailer had dropped now, it would have been destroyed because of the lies, let's be fair. But the fact he hid the key part of the game from the trailer, and still people kept buying it, and they did a little bit of a wind up about it in the beginning of Snake Eater, and the fact that they brought the character back and completely changed him up and brought in a version that people absolutely loved just shows Kojima knew what he was doing when he was creating this title. I love this game, and I'm currently trying to get my PlayStation 2 reset up just so I can play games like this again. It is brilliant. It really deserves a replay. So thank you so much for watching this video. So it's been an absolute nightmare to try and make the decisions on what I think are the best games that came out on the PlayStation 2, but there we go. Any that you disagree with, any that I've missed, please leave a comment. I'd love to know what I'm missing in there, or games that I may have missed myself that I really need to go and give a try. I'd love to hear them all. There's that many games, I'm going to need to do another PlayStation 2 game list, aren't I? Oh well.